his main focus in the next several weeks will be trying to deport illegal aliens, people who have come here without proper authorization. First time in over 100 years, we've had a president who is not only a new president, but is simultaneously a lame duck president. Trump wants these wars off the table. He considers them Biden's wars, that he doesn't care all that much on what terms they end. And that could be, I'm afraid, very bad news for the Ukrainians. Will Trump turn out to be a China hawk or a China negotiator? Again, as in the first term, we just don't know. It's certainly a signal to the UN system as a whole that it needs to get their act together. If Trump is concerned about it, the way to deal with Panama is not to threaten it implicitly with taking over the canal, but sit down with them quietly and work out a way to the bilateral relationship between India and the United States is probably the most important one we have in this century. At some point, we need to find the political will to allow more legal immigration. It's a question of, I think, the long-range future for the country.
My first question to you is, of course, how do you see the future of America in the next 4 years under Trump's presidency?
Well, I think it's going to be very tumultuous. I think the way Trump approaches things, whether it's international affairs or domestic affairs, reflects that he's very transactional. He doesn't really have a philosophy. He doesn't have a grand strategy in foreign policy. He doesn't really do policy as we understand that term. So he started off with a number of executive orders, and his main focus in the next several weeks will be trying to deport illegal aliens, people who have come here without proper authorization. We'll see how that goes. It's a very contentious issue, very difficult to do operationally. He has many other plans too, even though Republicans have a majority in Congress. It's a very narrow majority. There are a lot of challenges facing the United States around the world, in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in Asia, with China's threats to Taiwan and the South China Sea. So there's a lot going on simultaneously, and this is the first time in over 100 years we've had a president who is not only a new president, but is simultaneously a lame duck president because he can't run for another term. So very hard to predict.
Ambassador Bolton, what does Trump presidency mean for rest of the world? Since you have worked with him personally, you have served as his national security advisor, how his foreign policy will be it towards China, West Asia, Russia, Ukraine?
Well, I think in the case of Ukraine and the war in the Middle East, it's pretty clear Trump wants these wars off the table. He considers them Biden's wars. He has said that if he had been president, neither one would have happened. I don't think that's accurate, but that's what he thinks. And I think he's in kind of a rush to find a way to end them, which implies that he doesn't care all that much on what terms they end. And that could be, I'm afraid, very bad news for the Ukrainians. Could be good news for the Israelis. We don't know, but Trump's not interested so much in the substantive outcome as to clear his agenda of these legacy items, if you will, from the Biden presidency. With respect to China, it's a very significant question. During the campaign, Trump's rhetoric against China was very strong. He basically blames China because it was the origin of the COVID virus for costing him the 2020 election, which in his view was obviously unfair. But at the same time, just in the past couple of weeks, on the question of whether TikTok, this very, very popular app owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, he's turned from worried about TikTok as an intelligence vehicle for the Chinese intelligence community to saying he's going to try and save TikTok. And it's reported in the past couple of days he's very eager to visit Xi Jinping in Beijing. So will Trump turn out to be a China hawk or a China negotiator? Again, as in the first term, we just don't know.
Right. Ambassador Trump pulled out the US out of the Paris Agreement and the World Health Organization. What are your views on that?
Well, he pulled out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement in 2017 as well. So it's no surprise he's doing it again. My own view is that these big international climate change conferences really don't produce concrete movement. There are no enforcement mechanisms. The commitments made are not binding. The Paris Agreement simply every nation saying, here are our climate goals and we commit to trying to achieve those goals, which is nothing more than any politician wouldn't say, up to the point when they realize they can't achieve the goals and then suddenly they disappear. So I just don't think the Paris Agreement is what as significant as some people think. WHO is another anti-China move, if you will. The many allegations made, and I think many correct, that in the early days of COVID, Chinese influence on the WHO made it impossible for independent medical experts to really get a sense of where the disease came from, what its spread might be. And I think he's reacting against that Chinese influence in WHO. It's certainly a signal to the UN system as a whole that it needs to get their act together.
Right. So, President Donald Trump said on Monday that he may impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico as early as February 1. What is your comment on that?
Well, he had originally said he'd impose the tariffs on Canada and Mexico on day one, so he lost at least 10 days there. Canada and Mexico are the U.S. #1 and #2 trading partners. So if he goes ahead with that, and it's always important to underline the word if in dealing with Trump, but if he goes ahead with that, we could be in a trade war that could become a global trade war very quickly. And we don't have a lot of recent experience with tariff wars, but what we did back before the Depression was not good. So the impact on the economy obviously depends in the first instance on exactly what Trump proposes. We don't know what that is, but it also depends on what the reaction of the major economic players around the world is. Canada and Mexico, perhaps in the first instance, but the United Kingdom, the European Union, China, Japan, India, what are they going to do, respectively, if Trump imposes tariffs on them as well? So it's a very obscure picture, but one I think that could be very damaging to the world economy.
Right. Ambassador Bolton, Trump shocked the world with his remarks on Panama Canal, Gulf of Mexico, Greenland. What are your views on that?
Well, I think the Panama Canal is an example of Trump getting in his own way. I am concerned about the extent to which China has invested in major infrastructure projects in ports and canals and other sensitive areas around the world. I'm not aware there's any immediate problem in Panama, but if Trump is concerned about it, the way to deal with with Panama is not to threaten it implicitly with taking over the canal, but sit down with them quietly and work out a way to get non-Chinese companies involved in the canal's operations. Greenland is a very different matter. I do think America has a significant security interest in the future of Greenland because of China trying to become an Arctic power, because of Russia's presence around half of the Arctic Circle. So I think that the U.S., the NATO alliance as a whole, should be very concerned about a Chinese military presence, whether in formal bases or simply being in the neighborhood of Greenland and the waters around Greenland, and very concerned about their attempt to use the Belt and Road Initiative to gain significant economic foothold in a large landmass with a lot of natural resources and only about 60,000 people. But if you ask me how to do it, I'd say the same thing as I did with Panama. You do it quietly and behind the scenes and have respect for the democratically elected governments in both Denmark and Greenland. And in terms of the Gulf of Mexico now being the Gulf of America, look, the rest of the world isn't going to pay any attention to it. It's a needless diversion. It makes Trump look silly, makes the United States look silly.
Right. Sir, President Donald Trump signed an executive order Monday that revoked the security clearance of 51 former intelligence officials who signed a 2020 letter arguing that emails from a laptop belonging to Hunter Biden carried all the classic earmarks. That name also includes you. Would you like to make any comment on that?
Right. Well, I didn't sign the letter about Hunter Biden's laptop. What Trump objects to is the book I wrote about him, The Room Where It Happened, that was published in the middle of the election in 2020. Honestly, I'm not even sure I have an active security clearance anymore. I haven't been in the government. I haven't had any need in it. And I think it's kind of a juvenile thing on Trump's part. So it doesn't affect me really one way or the other.
Ambassador Bolton talking about India-US relationship. President Trump and Prime Minister Modi share a very good relationship. What are your views on India-US relationship under Trump 2.0?
Well, I think Prime Minister Modi does have a good personal relationship with Trump. I think that the Biden administration has made progress on the Asian security quad relationship, India, Japan, Australia, the US. I hope Trump continues that. In the meetings that I attended between the two of them when I was serving in the White House, uh, almost the entire conversation turned on trade issues. Trade's important. Trade's important for every country and deserves high level consideration. But there are important strategic issues where I think the U.S. and India have a common relationship. I've said for some time that the bilateral relationship between India and the United States is probably the most important one we have in this century. So I'd like to see the Prime Minister and Trump get beyond trade issues. I'm not saying they should ignore them. Obviously, that won't happen, but they need to talk about these broader strategic questions as well, I think, for the benefit of both countries.
Ambassador Bolton, just last question. There has been a lot of debate going on H1B visa program with the numerous changes in the administration's policies. It is believed that Trump may go back to stricter regulations on foreign workers, and Indian citizens are very are. Good beneficiaries of this H1B visa. So, how do you think would this have an effect on it?
That it's another important question where it's hard to give you an answer because of the uncertainty of what Trump is going to do on any given point. There's no doubt when we consider the problem of illegal immigration that the problem is severe and needs to be fixed, and Trump's position on that is very popular. What people don't talk about enough is the legal immigration system, which is hopelessly gridlocked. It's very politically difficult to change. My own view is that we should welcome additional immigrants. It's a source of strength for the United States. The visa program is a way to bring people in. They may decide to return to their home country. They may decide to apply for citizenship in the United States. But I think it's a very positive program for the United States. And at some point, we need to find the political will to allow more legal immigration. It's a question of I think the long range future for the country. It's just important for any sovereign state to say we're going to do it in an orderly fashion, and we're certainly not doing that now.